quiet H. Have you ever stood in a room full of people, smiling, breathing, pretending, and yet, deep inside, you were crumbling from the sting of public humiliation? Today, we're not just talking about pain. We're naming it. We're facing it. And we're reclaiming your power. There's a moment, maybe you felt it, when someone calls you out in a crowd, cuts you down, makes a snide remark with just enough sharpness to wound and just enough sarcasm to disguise it. And for a second, maybe longer, you wonder, what did I do to deserve this? You begin to question yourself. Was I too proud? Too visible? And that's exactly the trap. Because here's the truth that no one tells you soon enough. The quiet ache. It's not about you. It never was. When someone humiliates you in front of others, it often has nothing to do with your character and everything to do with their insecurity. It's not your presence that offends them. It's the threat they feel when they see it. You're standing there whole, maybe even a little bold, and the quiet H. And that can feel like an attack to someone who's still patching up the holes in their own self-worth. H. People who haven't made peace with their own pain will do anything to avoid feeling it again. And one of the quickest ways to escape their discomfort is to transfer it to someone else. You. If they can embarrass you, mock you, laugh at you, point dick at you, then for a fleeting moment, they get to outrun their own shame. They get to feel powerful, important, in control, even if it's just for a breath. But it's not real power. It's borrowed confidence, and it's always on a time limit. Think of it like this. Imagine someone holding a cracked mirror. Every time they look into it, they see a distorted version of themselves. But then you walk in with your own mirror. Clear, whole, honest. And instead of face through of their reflection, they throw a stone at yours. Because if they can shatter your mirror, they don't have to deal with the brokenness in theirs. And the quiet HE, that's what humiliation, often a desperate, unconscious attempt to smash someone else's clarity so they don't have to face their own confusion. It can be easy to internalize these moments, to carry them, to let them define the narrative who you are. But you must remember, people don't attack what's weak. They attack what threatens them. And sometimes your light, your joy, your intelligence, your courage is just too blinding for those who haven't yet found their own. And here's something we forget people hurt people. That's not an excuse. It's an explanation. It's not permission to let them continue. But it's a reason to not take it so personally. Because if you carry every insult as a reflection of your worth, the quiet ache, you'll be too burdened to walk into your destiny. So when you find yourself in those moments, when the room goes quiet, or the laughter stings, or your voice shakes from holding back tears, breathe, pause, and say to yourself, this is not mine to carry. Because it's not. Their projection doesn't belong to you. And the quiet H, their fear doesn't belong to you. Their shame is not your shame. You were not made to live small just so others can feel big. And when they try to humiliate you, and the quiet H, when they try to dim your light in front of others, remember this: the fact that they needed an audience to try and destroy you only proves how powerful you truly are. No one gathers a crowd to fight something insignificant. You're seen, even when it hurts. You matter, even when they try to make you feel invisible. You are whole, even in the face of their brokenness. Let them say what they will. You keep shining. That's the real strength. That's the quiet rebellion. Ache, that's how you rise. There's a particular kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises. No raised voices, no open confrontation, quiet, just a room full of laughter and your heart quietly breaking. It happens in those moments when someone throws a joke your way. Maybe it's about your weight, your job, your dreams, your past. And everyone chuckles, or worse, stays silent, while you sit there trying to laugh it off so you don't seem dramatic. Because no one wants to be that person, the one who can't take a joke. But deep down, you know what just happened. That wasn't humor. That was a power play disguised as wit. The quiet H. This is how manipulation often hides in sarcasm, in so-called teasing, in comments like, H, don't be so sensitive. Or, I was only kidding. These phrases are used to dismiss your pain and protect their control. And the worst part is the quiet ache. It makes you question your own reality. Was I overreacting? Maybe I'm just too emotional. No. You're not too emotional. You're awake. You're paying attention, and what you felt was real. Here's what's really happening when someone makes you the punchline in public. What they're doing is trying to place themselves above you, socially, emotionally, energetically. They want the room to see them as confident, clever, charming, the quiet H. And they're willing to use your dignity as the price of that performance. Because to them, keeping control over how others perceive them is worth more than how you feel, H. But real confidence doesn't need a victim. Real confidence doesn't make you smaller to feel taller. Imagine a group of people on a seesaw. Instead of balancing together, someone decides they need to be higher, so they slam down one end. Yours, so they can rise. But here's what they forget: the seesaw always comes back around. That moment of superiority, it's temporary. But the damage they do, the trust they break, the dignity they erode, that lingers, the quiet H. And let's talk about what happens in your body during these moments. Your throat tightens, your chest burns, your hands tremble just enough to notice. And the quiet ache, that's your nervous system saying, this is not safe. This is not okay. Yet you smile, you stay polite. And the quiet ache, because society has taught us, especially those raised to keep the peace, that expressing discomfort makes us difficult. So we carry the hurt quietly, quiet ache, so no one else has to feel uncomfortable. But here's the true thing: if someone's joke only lands when it hits you in the gut, it's not a joke. It's a shot, and you are allowed to say, that wasn't funny to me. You are allowed to speak up. You are allowed to leave the room, to change the subject, to set the boundary. This isn't about being overly sensitive. This is about self-respect. People who rely on this kind of humor are often deeply afraid of intimacy, H, because real connection requires vulnerability. And if they can keep you off balance with sarcasm and subtle jabs, they never have to truly reveal themselves. They keep control and the quiet, but at the cost of closeness. You, however, get to choose differently. You don't have to be silent to be kind. You don't have to laugh along to belong. And the key, your peace is not worth trading for anyone's approval. So when someone tries to humiliate you through a joke, the quiet ache, when they wrap cruelty in a smile and call it just messing around, remember this: you are not the problem. Their fear of losing control is. Their discomfort with your truth is. And you are under no obligation to soften yourself to make them comfortable. Let your voice be steady. Let your boundaries be sacred. And let the world learn that kindness doesn't mean passivity. It means integrity. You can be both soft and unshakable. You don't need to be in on the joke when the joke is on you. Your worth doesn't need laughter to validate it. You are not too sensitive. You are just finally starting to honor what you feel. And that is the beginning of freedom. Quiet H. There's a heaviness that comes when someone singles you out. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've done something right. because you walked into the room with a quiet confidence, because you held your head a little higher, because you dared to own your space, your voice, your worth. And instead of being celebrated, you're mocked, undermined, publicly embarrassed, and deep down you wonder, why me? Why would someone choose to humiliate me like this? The answer is uncomfortable, but it's real. Sometimes people humiliate others not because they see weakness, but because they see strength they wish they had, and that strength scares them. It confronts something inside of them that feels inadequate, something they haven't yet healed or faced. Your courage reminds them of their fear, your quiet H of their absence, your growth of their stuckness. And rather than turning inward and asking why that discomfort exists, they turn outward and try to tear you down. This is the hidden face of jealousy. It doesn't always look like envy. Sometimes it looks like laughter, like passive-aggressive comments, like backhanded compliments in front of others. It's subtle, but it stings all the same. And the danger is we're taught to ignore it, to tell ourselves, they're probably right, or I shouldn't make it a big deal. But you feel it, that shift in the air, that twinge of shame, that H in your chest. That's your truth whispering. This isn't about you. This is about what you reflect. Think of it like this: your light walks into a room, and without saying a word, it exposes the shadows. Not because you're trying to, because light does what light does. It illuminates, it reveals. And for those not ready to see, and the quiet H that can threatening. So instead of owning their discomfort, they try to switch the narrative. They try to flip the script. Make you feel like you're the problem, because it's easier to mock your light than to admit they haven't found theirs. We see it in schoolyards and boardrooms, in families and friendships, and the quiet H. The friend who jokes about your new success in front of others. The colleague who minimizes your ideas when your boss is listening. The sibling who rolls their eyes every time you speak with confidence. These are all ways he shows up wearing a mask, pretending it's just a joke, just a comment, just a moment. But here's the deeper truth: your greatness can be triggering to someone still questioning their own, and you are not responsible for shrinking to make them feel safe. Jealousy, when unacknowledged, turns into cruelty. When we don't know how to handle the H of comparison, we lash out, not because we're evil, because we're afraid. And people who humiliate others often operate from that place of fear, deep, unspoken, gnawing fear that they are not enough. And instead of healing it, they try to float onto the person who reminds them of what they've lost or never dared to reach. For it's a heartbreaking cycle, one rooted not in hate, but in longing. But your job, your sacred task, is not to absorb their projection. It's to stay grounded in your truth. And the quiet ache, in who you are, in what you're becoming. You not need to apologize for your light. You do not need to dim down to survive the presence of someone else's jealousy. And the quiet ache, that's not humility. That's self-abandonment. You can be compassionate, yes, but not at the cost of your own voice. So when someone humiliates you out of envy, remember this and the quiet H. They are not reacting to you. They're reacting to the version of themselves they wish they could access. And while that's sad, it's not yours to fix. H, it's not yours to carry. You were never too much. You were just too awake for someone still asleep to their own power. Let them feel what they need to feel. You, H, you keep walking, keep growing, keep rising, because your light may unsettle some, but it will awaken others. And that's what you were born for. Sometimes The humiliation you experience has absolutely nothing to do with this moment, this day, or even you as a person. Sometimes, H. The shame someone tries to place on your shoulders is something that they've been carrying for generations. Something passed down, unspoken and unresolved, from those who came before them. It's easy to believe that when someone embarrasses you or cuts you down in front of others, they're simply reacting to you. To what you said, how you dressed, how you showed up. But often, they're reacting from a place far older, far deeper than this conversation or this moment in time. H. What looks like humiliation is often generational trauma in disguise. See, not all wounds bleed. Some are inherited. Some come in the form of beliefs, behaviors, and the quiet ache and emotional patterns handed down like family heirlooms. Only no one talks about them. No one says, "This is how we learned to shame others because we were never taught how to love ourselves." Or, "This is how we cope with feeling powerless, by making someone else feel small." Think about it, Ig. A parent humiliates their child in front of others. Quiet ache. Not always because they want to be cruel, but because that's how they were raised. They learned, often very early on, that love is conditional, that performance matters more than vulnerability. That shame is a tool, a motivator. That if you embarrass someone, maybe you can scare them into behaving, ache. And if you can control them, maybe you won't feel so out of control yourself. And unless someone decides to break that cycle, it continues. Over and over again. What was done to them becomes what they do to others. Pain recycled. Shame redistributed. A teacher belittles a student's mistake in front of the class. Not to educate them, quiet ache. But because somewhere inside, that teacher still carries the wounds of being told they'd never be enough, ache. A manager mocks a young employee in front of their peers, not a correct behavior, but because they're scared someone new might be smarter, more talented, more free. That fear, deep, generational fear, takes the form of humiliation, but it's not always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. It's the eye roll, the public correction, and the quiet ache, the dismissive joke, the way someone talks over you or behind your back or about like you're not even in the room. And when this happens, ache, your first instinct might be to internalize it. What did I do wrong? Why do they treat me like this? But what if you paused and asked a different question? H. What happened to them that they believe this is the only way to feel powerful? That question doesn't excuse the behavior, but it gives it context. It brings compassion to the conversation, not just for them, but for you and the quiet ache. Because if you can see that the humiliation you're experiencing isn't about your value, but about their history, it's easier to lay it down. Ache, to not carry it as proof of your unworthiness, to not let it define your story. You are not here to be endpoint of someone else's generational pain. And the quiet H. You are here to break the pattern. That starts by recognizing what's yours and what's not. Shame that's passed down through families, through systems, through cultures is sneaky. It masquerades as disciplined humor, as tough love. But underneath it is a deep fear of vulnerability, of failure, of being seen. When someone humiliates you in front of others, they may be reenacting the only script they've ever known. One that says, if I can control the room, I can protect myself. One that says, if I shame you first, maybe you won't see how ashamed I am. That's not strength. That's a survival mechanism. And it's old. Quiet H. It's tired. And it needs to end with someone brave enough to say, no more. That someone can be you. You don't have to respond with shame. You don't have to pass it on. Quiet H. You can choose empathy without self-betrayal. You can say, I see the pain you're coming from. H. But I won't let it land on me. You were not born to be the container of someone else's unhealed trauma. You were born to be free, and quiet ache every time you choose to respond to humiliation with grace instead of revenge, with boundaries instead of bitterness. You are doing sacred work. You are interrupting a legacy. You are changing the narrative. That is not weakness. That is courage in its purest form. And the next time someone tries to humiliate you, ache. Not because of who you are, but because of what they carry, may you remember you are not the shame. You are the light that reveals it. And light doesn't apologize for shining. Quiet aged, there is a kind of silence that doesn't bring peace. It brings pain. It's the silence that follows a cruel joke at your expense. The silence that lingers after someone humiliates you in front of others. The silence that fills the room when no one says a word. Even though everyone knows what just happened. That silence. It's not neutral. It speaks volumes. And what it says isn't we saw it. We heard it, but we chose not to stand with you. It's one thing to be hurt by a person. Shh. But the deeper wound often comes from the ones who were there. The ones who had the power to speak up, to say, hey, that's not okay. To shift the energy in the room, and didn't. There's a reason silence feels so loud in those moments. And the quiet ache. Because your nervous system is scanning for safety, for support, for someone to catch your eyes and say, even without words, I've got you. But when everyone looks away or stays quiet, it doesn't feel like absence. It feels like abandonment. And it hurts. It hurts because it's isolating. Because it confirms the lie that maybe you were the problem. Maybe what happened wasn't that bad. Maybe you're just being too sensitive. But here's the truth, quiet. When someone humiliates you publicly and no one intervenes, that silence becomes a second wound. It echoes the first, and it reinforces the shame. It's a kind of complicity, not always intentional, but real and harmful. Now, let's be clear, and we've all been silent when we should have spoken. Every one of us. Out of discomfort. Out of not knowing what to say, we freeze. We think, this isn't my place, or I don't want to make it worse. And in those moments, ache. Our inaction feels safer than our voice. But here's what we have to remember. Silence protects the one doing harm. It never protects the one being harmed. It tells the one causing the pain, you can get away with this. And it tells the one on the receiving end, you're alone. And for the person being humiliated, resilience and the quiet, especially in front of others, nothing cuts deeper than the feeling that everyone saw and no one cared enough to act. Think about the ripple effect of that. In workplaces, ache. In families, in friend groups, a single humiliating moment can shape someone's sense of safety, trust, and self-worth for years. And it wasn't just the words or the act that caused the damage, it was the silence that followed. But here's the sacred, terrifying, liberating truth, the quiet age. We get to choose differently. We get to be the person who doesn't stay quiet, who doesn't let fear or awkwardness stop us from stepping in. And stepping in doesn't have to be a dramatic confrontation. It can be a quiet, firm, that's not okay. A shift in body language, a refusal to laugh, a glance that says, I see you, I've got your back. Because silence may be comfortable, but courage rarely is. Courage is disruptive. It shakes the room. It breaks the unspoken rules. It risks being misunderstood, but it also changes things. It heals. It protects. It says, not here, not today, not on my watch. And the quiet ache. And if you're the one who's been humiliated while everyone else stayed quiet, hear this, your pain is valid. What happened to you mattered. Ache. And just because didn't step in doesn't mean you deserve to stand alone. It means they weren't ready to hold the kind of bravery that moment required. That is not a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of their fear. Your voice is sacred. Your dignity is non-negotiable. And even if no one else speaks up, you can still speak truth to yourself. That was wrong. I am not what they said. I am not how they treated me. I am whole and I am enough. H. And to those of us witnessing someone else being humiliated, here's the invitation: be braver. Not perfect. Braver. Because every time we speak up, we break the chain. We send a message that dignity matters more than comfort. That people matter more than power. Your silence has power. So does your voice. Use it wisely, H. Because in a world where humiliation often hides in plain sight, your courage could be the turning point. Not just for them, but for all of us. You are not what they said about you. You are not the moment they mocked you. You are not the silence of the crowd. You are the fire that still stands. The heart that still feels. The soul that still hopes.